Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to crack open PT Diamond's Citra Propertindo's 2024 annual report. We're going to see just how a major player is handling Indonesia's really complex and kind of tricky property market. Okay, so let's start with the big picture, Indonesia's economy. The whole backdrop for our story is a country that's really on the move, right? It posted a super solid 5.03% GDP growth in 2024. Now, that number tells us there's some strong domestic activity, a really resilient economic engine. On paper, you'd think, wow, this is the perfect environment for a property developer to absolutely crush it. But, and this is a big but, the story isn't quite that simple. Because when we zoom right into the property sector itself, a totally different picture starts to emerge. See, according to Bank Indonesia's own data, while the residential property market is still technically growing, that growth is actually losing steam. It dropped from 1.46% in Q3 all the way down to 1.39% by the end of the year. Now, that might not sound like a huge drop, but it's a subtle and pretty significant cooling off. And this right here, this creates a paradox. You've got a national economy that's heating up, but a property market that's kind of starting to cool down. I mean, that is a real tightrope walk for any developer. So the question is, how does a company not just survive, but actually thrive in an environment like this? Well, let's meet our protagonist. This is the core identity of PT Diamond Citra Propertindo, or just Diamondland. Now, you might read this and think it's just some marketing fluff, but it's actually central to their entire strategy. See, they're not just selling buildings or apartments. They are selling a very specific, aspirational lifestyle. And they believe that's what gives them an edge in a super crowded market. And here's what that looks like in the real world. This table really shows their product focus. So you've got the traditional high-rise apartment, but their real secret sauce, their innovation, is this condo villa concept. These low-rise developments, like Apple One and the new Apple 3, they offer this unique blend of apartment living, but with a more grounded, community kind of feel. It's a really creative answer to what the modern Indonesian buyer is actually looking for. All right, so they've got a unique product, they've got a clear brand identity, but did this whole lifestyle-focused strategy actually pay off? Let's get into the 2024 numbers and see how it all translated into their financial performance. So on the surface, the news is fantastic. I mean, after a bit of a dip in 2023, their net sales came roaring back in 2024. And they didn't just recover, they totally surged past their 2022 levels. We're talking a jump of over 50% from the previous year. This tells you that, yes, their products are definitely resonating, and they're successfully getting units into the hands of buyers. That's a major win for the top line. But then you see this slide, and it reveals the other side of the story. While they're making a really healthy 56.9% in gross margin on their sales, that's the profit before other costs. By the time everything else is paid for, that profit gets squeezed down to a razor-thin 2.9% net margin. What this suggests is that the cost of getting those sales, aggressive marketing, sales commissions, all the overhead, is substantial. This is that paradox in action. Amazing sales, but intense pressure on the bottom line. That super tight margin didn't slow them down, though. Operationally, 2024 was a year of real, tangible progress. They held their key shareholder meetings, they pushed forward with major construction milestones, and, this is a big one, they completed the main structure for their new flagship project, the Apple 3 condo villa. They're clearly taking that revenue and plowing it right back into growth. So it's clear they're in a high-growth, low-margin phase. And given that intense pressure on profitability, what's the game plan for the future? How are they planning to navigate this incredibly tricky path ahead? Well, their strategy is basically a multi-pronged attack. First, they're going hard on digital marketing, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, to reach their target audience where they're actually spending their time. But they're not abandoning the old school stuff either. They're keeping a physical presence at big property fairs. And maybe most importantly, they're diversifying their customer base by targeting corporate clients with B2B packages. That's a smart move beyond just selling to individuals. And the report shows they are definitely clear-eyed about the challenges. They know the competition is absolutely fierce. They are totally aware that any delay in finishing a project can have these huge financial knock-on effects. They're watching the risk of buyers defaulting on payments, and of course, they are managing that constant pressure of price fluctuations on their already tight profitability. So what we're left with is this fundamental question. And it's a challenge facing not just Diamondland, but businesses everywhere. They're pushing so hard for growth, right? Building new projects, driving up sales, but it's all coming at the cost of their profit margins. This is the tightrope they walk. How do you balance that aggressive drive for growth with the critical need for sustainable long-term profitability? That is the billion rupiah question.